After graduation, I quietly placed my grandparents' $3 million estate into a trust, just in case. Last week, my parents and sister showed up grinning. We had the house signed into my name. You're out by Friday. I just smiled and said, you really think I'd let that happen? 2 days later, they came back with movers, then froze when they saw who was standing on the porch holding the folder. Can you believe the sheer audacity of some people? Just when I thought I'd finally found peace after burying my incredible grandparents, my biological family rolled up, grins plastered on their faces, ready to kick me out of my own home. They thought they had me cornered, armed with what they claimed were legal documents, but they had no idea who they were dealing with. The look on their faces when they returned with movers, only to find a whole team waiting for them on the porch. Honestly, it was priceless. You're going to want to hear how this wild family drama unfolded. To really get why I had to take such drastic measures, why I, Olivia Morgan at 27, found myself fighting for my grandparents' legacy, we have to go back. Way back. You see, my grandparents, Harold and Martha Morgan, raised me from the age of 5. My parents, Richard and Elaine, essentially checked out, chasing their careers in another state. What they were really chasing was a life free from responsibility, jumping from one failed get-rich-quick scheme to the next. My childhood home wasn't just a house. It was this beautiful Victorian in a historic Boston neighborhood, a place that had been in my grandfather's family for 3 generations. Along with other properties and investments, their estate was worth around $3 million. But to me, it wasn't about the money. It was home, the place where I learned what real family meant. Every morning, Grandma Martha would wake me with the smell of fresh muffins, calling me her little lawyer, long before I ever thought of law school. Grandpa Harold, with infinite patience, taught me to fish in the park pond, untangling my line again and again. Our evenings were spent in the library side by side, sharing passages from our books. Those quiet moments, that deep connection, they were everything. From them, I learned everything important. Honesty, hard work, responsibility. Grandpa always said, your word is your bond, Olivia. Break it, and you lose something you can never buy back. Grandma, sharp as a whip, emphasized education and independence. A woman must be able to stand on her own 2 feet, she'd tell me, especially when others tried to knock her down. My relationship with my biological parents and my younger sister, Valerie, was complicated. They'd visit maybe twice a year, usually around Christmas when gifts were expected, or conveniently when they needed money. Each visit was a painful repeat. Exaggerated affection, casual questions about Grandpa's investments, then a teary story about unexpected expenses and loans that were, of course, never repaid. Dad had filed for bankruptcy twice before I was 10. Mom dabbled in questionable ventures, from miracle diet pills to timeshares. They lived way beyond their means, always convinced the next big thing would make them rich. Valerie, 7 years younger, was a quick study. By her teens, she'd mastered their techniques of manipulation and entitlement. Grandma once suggested Valerie come live with us too, after a particularly disastrous visit where Valerie stole from my piggy bank. But my parents refused. Valerie was their baby, the one they could manage because she demanded so little actual parenting. As my grandparents aged, the tension grew. Dad called more frequently, asking pointed questions about their health, their financial advisors. Mom sent links to retirement communities, hinting the house was too much. Each visit felt heavier, filled with whispered conversations that abruptly stopped when I entered a room. I excelled in school, propelled by my grandparents' unwavering support. While other kids got new phones, I got books, museum memberships, educational trips. When I was 16, I started working at the library, despite my grandparents' protests. I saw the prescription costs, the property taxes straining their fixed income. My decision to study law solidified during my senior year when an elderly couple, the Wilsons, lost their life savings to their own son. He'd convinced them to sign over power of attorney, then emptied their accounts. The betrayal and helplessness they felt haunted me. I knew I had to learn how to prevent such injustices. College and law school were a blur. Grandpa developed heart problems. Grandma was diagnosed with early-stage dementia. I turned down scholarships to prestigious, faraway schools, choosing a local university so I could live at home, attend classes, study at night, and help care for them. It was exhausting, but they had sacrificed everything for me. This was simply what family does. Graduation day was bittersweet. Seeing Grandpa in his wheelchair, oxygen tank beside him, and Grandma, occasionally confused but beaming when our eyes met, filled me with a quiet joy. Wild horses couldn't keep us away, Grandpa had declared. My parents and Valerie were, predictably, absent. Mom texted a vague excuse about car trouble. Their absence still stung, but I'd learned not to expect them at my important moments. That evening at Grandpa's favorite Italian restaurant, he raised a shaky toast. To our Olivia, who makes us prouder every day. The finest granddaughter, and now the finest lawyer in Massachusetts. Grandma nodded vigorously. Smart as a whip. Just like her grandfather. Their pride was a powerful fuel, hardening my resolve. During my final semester, an elective on elder law and estate planning became a passion. Professor Sarah Winters, a former prosecutor, revealed the shocking truth. 70% of elder financial abuse is perpetrated by family members. The betrayal, she warned, is often more devastating than the financial loss. Her words resonated with me, echoing my family's history. I began researching irrevocable trusts, ways to shield assets from predatory relatives. The parallels between my family and the case studies we discussed were chilling. 2 weeks after graduating, I made a secret appointment with Nancy Hoffman, an elder law specialist Professor Winters recommended. I brought my grandparents' financial documents, which I had access to from helping with bills. Nancy reviewed everything, her expression growing increasingly concerned. Your instincts are correct, Olivia, she told me. Given the pattern of behavior and your father's inquiries, there's cause for concern. An irrevocable trust offers significant protection, but your grandparents must establish it voluntarily. That evening I gathered my courage. After dinner, I gently broached the subject. Grandpa reacted exactly as I feared. Richard would never try to take our home, he insisted, his voice gruff. He's still my son. Grandma, twisting her wedding ring, asked, What makes you think such a thing, dear? Reluctantly, I laid it all out. The increasing visits coinciding with their declining health. The pointed questions about investments. The not-so-subtle hints about the house being too much work. Then I showed them the smoking gun. An email from Dad to a real estate agent, inquiring about comparable sales and the market value of their home, which I'd found while helping Grandpa with his computer. Grandma started to cry quietly. He borrowed $50,000 5 years ago, she confessed, for a business opportunity that couldn't wait. He promised to pay it back, but when your grandfather asked about it last Christmas, he became angry. Said we were wealthy enough not to miss it, that we owed him for taking you in. Grandpa's face had gone pale. Show me that trust information again, he said finally, his voice heavy with resignation. 3 days later, we met with Nancy Hoffman. The Morgan Family Trust was born. It was complex, requiring multiple meetings, but we structured it so my grandparents retained full control and benefit during their lifetime. After their passing, I would become the trustee. The house, their investments, everything transferred into the trust. Protection. Absolute secrecy was key. My grandparents told no one. I continued living with them, building my career at a small family law firm, and helping care for them. To outsiders, nothing had changed. But I slept better, knowing their legacy was safe. 6 months after the trust was established, Grandpa's health plummeted. What we thought was fatigue was advanced pancreatic cancer. 3 to 6 months at most. We were devastated. Somehow the news reached my parents. Suddenly they called daily, visited weekly, unprecedented. Valerie even took a leave from her nail salon, though her help mainly consisted of going through closets, cataloging valuables when she thought no one was watching. One evening, I overheard my parents in the garden. They thought everyone was asleep, but I was getting Grandpa's medication. Once the old man is gone, we need to move quickly before she has time to hide anything, Dad was saying. Mom is so confused these days, she'll sign whatever we put in front of her. Mom whispered. What about Olivia? She's always watching, and now she's a lawyer. Dad scoffed. She's a brand new lawyer with student loans and no real experience. We'll offer her a small portion to keep quiet. If she makes trouble, we'll contest any will on grounds of undue influence. After all, she's been living here dependent on them, possibly manipulating them. Who would believe her over us, the actual children? I stood there, frozen, the glass of water in my hand growing warm, listening as they plotted to sell the house, liquidate investments, and finally have the lifestyle they deserved. When Valerie joined them, eagerly adding her own ideas about which antiques would fetch the highest prices, I felt physically ill. The next morning I called Nancy Hoffman. She reassured me the trust was ironclad but warned me to be vigilant about Grandma signing anything once Grandpa passed. As Grandpa grew weaker, he seemed to sense the vultures circling. One night, as I sat with him, his breathing labored. He gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Promise me you'll protect your grandmother and this house," he whispered. "It's not just property, Olivia. It's the physical embodiment of our family history, our love, our sacrifices." Richard never understood that. He sees only dollar signs where I see memories. Tears streamed down my face. "Promised." He nodded, satisfied. 3 days later he slipped into a coma. He passed peacefully the next morning, Grandma and I at his bedside. The funeral was small, dignified, just as he would have wanted. My parents and Valerie arrived 20 minutes late, dressed inappropriately flashy, and left immediately, claiming a long drive. Before leaving, Dad pulled me aside, asking bluntly about the will. I delivered a eulogy focusing on Grandpa's integrity, his gentle wisdom, his unconditional love. A life well lived isn't measured by wealth, but by love shared. Grandpa had been truly rich. After the funeral, the reality of being Grandma's sole caretaker settled heavily. Grief accelerated her dementia. Some days she recognized me instantly. Others she'd ask when Grandpa was coming home. Each time I had to gently remind her he was gone, watching her heart break anew. I rearranged my work schedule, hired Margaret, a compassionate home health aide, and established new rituals. Classic movies, photo albums, reading from her favorite books. These activities seemed to anchor her, providing islands of clarity. My parents called occasionally, always asking about Grandma's condition in a way that felt more like checking on an investment than expressing genuine concern. I gave them minimal information, growing more protective. 6 months after Grandpa's death, Grandma developed pneumonia. Her weakened system couldn't fight it. Her final days were peaceful at home in her own bed, just as she wished. I read to her from Jane Austen, played the classical music she and Grandpa loved. On her last night, she had a moment of complete lucidity. She looked at me, squeezed my hand. "Elizabeth," she said, confusing me with my mother. "I'm so proud of the woman you've become. So different from." She trailed off, then refocused. "Take care of our Olivia." Before I could correct her, she drifted back to sleep, passing quietly in the night, her hand still in mine. The funeral was even smaller than Grandpa's. My parents didn't attend, sending a generic flower arrangement signed by their secretary. I wasn't surprised, just sadly confirmed in my understanding of their true nature. I buried her beside Grandpa, taking comfort in knowing they were together again. I returned to an empty house that echoed with memories, both comforting and painful. For the first time I was truly alone, without the anchors who had been my true north. But I was also strengthened by their legacy of love and values. I would honor them by protecting what they had built. 2 weeks after Grandma's funeral, still adjusting to the silence and the enormity of my loss, the doorbell rang. It was a Sunday morning. My parents and Valerie stood there, somber expressions carefully arranged. "Oh, Olivia," Mom exclaimed, pulling me into a stiff hug that felt more like a performance. "We're so sorry about Mom. We came as soon as we could clear our schedules." Dad nodded solemnly. "Family needs to stick together," he declared, patting my shoulder awkwardly before stepping past me, his eyes already scanning the antique furniture. Valerie, 20 but dressed like a teenager, gave me a quick side hug. "This house is even bigger than I remembered," she commented, not bothering to hide her assessment of its value. I invited them in with surface politeness, offering coffee and pastries. As we sat in the living room, the conversation followed a script I could have written myself. Cursory questions about Grandma's final days, then a rapid pivot to inheritance. "Have you had a chance to look through her papers?" Dad asked, trying for casual indifference. "I assume there's a will that needs to be probated." "I'm handling everything," I replied neutrally. Her affairs were in good order. Mom leaned forward, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was sympathetic. "You must be so lonely in this big house all by yourself." It's a lot for one person to maintain. Actually, I'm managing fine, I said. I love this house. Well, of course you do, sweetie, Mom said with a patronizing smile. But realistically, a young woman like you should be in a modern apartment downtown, close to other young professionals. Your father and I have been thinking we could help you sell this place and find something more suitable. Dad nodded enthusiastically. Property values are at an all-time high. It would be smart to sell now before the market shifts. And of course, Valerie added, examining her manicure, whatever comes from Grandma and Grandpa's estate should be divided fairly between family members. I mean, just because you lived with them doesn't mean you get everything, right? Their transparency was almost comical. If I hadn't been grieving and disgusted, I might have laughed. Instead, I simply stated I wasn't making any decisions about the house in the immediate future, and changed the subject. They stayed for 3 days. 3 days where I caught my mother going through Grandma's jewelry box, my father measuring rooms and taking photos for memories, and Valerie trying to pry information from Margaret about bank accounts. On the second evening, I overheard Dad on the porch speaking to someone about real estate values. The comps show at least $3.2 million in this market, he was saying, maybe more with some updates. We just need to move quickly once we have control. Later that night, I found a browser window open on Valerie's laptop, showing search results for challenging a trust and contesting inheritance. Her browsing history revealed searches for local estate attorneys and how to prove undue influence. The next morning, I confronted them gently over breakfast. I noticed you all seem very interested in the house and Grandma's assets, I said calmly. Is there something specific you're hoping to find? Dad flushed red but quickly recovered. Just trying to help you sort things out, honey. You have enough on your plate with your new career and all this grief. Mom nodded vigorously. We're just concerned about you, darling. Such responsibility for someone so young. And we want to make sure everything is fair, Valerie added pointedly. Grandma and Grandpa might have been confused in their later years. I simply nodded and said I appreciated their concern but had everything under control. They left later that day, with promises to return soon to help further. The moment their car pulled away, I called Nancy Hoffman and updated her. She advised vigilance but assured me the trust was secure. For several weeks I heard nothing. I actually began to hope they'd accepted it. I was deep in a new case at work, finally establishing a routine that didn't revolve around caregiving, when they reappeared without warning. All three walked up the front path as I was leaving for work, their expressions triumphant. Dad was carrying a folder of documents. "Good morning, Olivia," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "We hate to do this, but we need to talk about your living situation." Mom stepped forward, her smile tight. "We found some papers in our safe deposit box. An older will that your grandparents signed years ago, leaving everything to your father as their only child. We've had it verified by an attorney." Valerie added gleefully. "We also have papers showing the house has been signed over to Dad. The trust you think protects everything? Apparently not valid when there's a prior will." Dad extended the folder toward me. "We're not unreasonable. We'll give you until Friday to pack your things. We've already lined up a buyer for the house." I looked at their smug faces, at the folder of what I knew were fraudulent documents, and felt a strange calm settle over me. "You really think I would let that happen?" I asked quietly. Their confidence faltered momentarily, but Dad recovered quickly. "This is happening whether you like it or not. Friday, Olivia. Be out by noon." As they turned to leave, I called after them. "Before you do anything irrevocable, you might want to consult a better lawyer. One who knows the difference between a genuine will and a fabrication." Dad's face darkened. "Don't threaten me, young lady. You're not the only one who knows about the law." With that parting shot, they left, confident in their victory. But that was their first mistake. The moment they drove off, my legal training kicked in. And frankly, my grandparents' protective instincts. This wasn't just about inheritance. It was about honoring my promise and standing up to years of manipulation. First, I called Jake Thompson, the best litigator at my firm, a fraud specialist. "Can you come over tonight?" I asked. "My family is trying to steal my grandparents' estate with forged documents, and they've given me until Friday to vacate." Jake arrived within the hour with his paralegal. I laid out everything. The trust documents, my grandparents' medical records proving they were competent when they signed, my journal documenting my parents' suspicious behavior, and my recollection of their fraudulent claims. If what they showed you is what I think it is, Jake said, his expression grim, they're committing several felonies: forgery, fraud, attempted theft by deception. But we need to see those documents to be certain. My next call was to Nancy Hoffman. They're making their move, I told her. And it's as brazen as we feared. Nancy was reassuringly calm. The trust is ironclad, Olivia, but we should file for an emergency injunction to prevent any recording of fraudulent deeds or transfers. I'll draft it tonight and file first thing tomorrow. With my legal team mobilizing, I turned to practical security. I called a locksmith who changed every lock in the house that afternoon. Next, a security company installed cameras covering all entrances. By evening, the house was secure. I made a final call to my bank, confirming all accounts were protected and flagged for unusual activity. The bank manager, who had known my grandparents for decades, was appalled and personally placed alerts on everything connected to the estate. As night fell, I organized all the trust documentation, creating multiple copies stored in different locations. One in my home safe, another with Jake, a third with Nancy, and digital copies secured in encrypted cloud storage. No single point of failure could compromise our protection. That evening, my phone started ringing with calls from my parents and Valerie. I let them go to voicemail. The messages started politely, with Dad suggesting we talk like adults, but quickly devolved into threats. "You have no idea who you're messing with," was Dad's final voicemail. "That house and money are rightfully mine, and I will have them one way or another." The next morning, I met with a larger legal team assembled by Jake and Nancy. Sophia Rodriguez, a specialist in estate litigation, reviewed our documents and strategy. "Their claim about a prior will taking precedence over the trust is completely without merit," she confirmed. "Once assets are transferred into an irrevocable trust, they are no longer part of the estate to be distributed by will. Any competent lawyer would know this, which suggests they either have a very bad attorney, or more likely, no legitimate attorney at all." We developed a multi-pronged approach. First, the injunction preventing any property transfers. Second, a cease and desist letter regarding their fraudulent claims. And third, preparation for a potential lawsuit for harassment and attempted fraud if they persisted. "What about the documents they claim to have?" I asked. "The supposed earlier will and property transfer? If they attempt to file those anywhere, we will immediately challenge them as fraudulent," Sophia explained. "We have substantial evidence of your grandparents' intentions through the properly executed trust, plus their medical records showing they were mentally competent, the ongoing journal you kept, and witnesses like Margaret who can testify to their clear wishes." While the legal team worked, I began gathering evidence about my parents' history of financial misconduct through careful research and contacts from law school. I documented my father's 2 bankruptcies, a tax lien, and a small claims judgment against my mother for a failed business venture. By Thursday afternoon, my family's desperation was showing. Valerie posted a rambling message on social media, claiming I had manipulated our sick grandparents and stolen the family legacy, tagging extended family and old neighbors. My parents took a more direct approach, showing up at my law firm unannounced, demanding to speak with me. When the receptionist explained I was in court, they refused to leave, causing such a disturbance that security had to escort them out. My colleagues were shocked but incredibly supportive. The incident only strengthened their resolve to help me. Later that day, a concerned neighbor told me my father had been going door to door on my street, telling people I was mentally unstable, and trying to gather community support for their takeover of the property. Fortunately, most neighbors had known my grandparents and me for years, and were suspicious of these suddenly concerned relatives they'd rarely seen. As Friday approached, I prepared for all contingencies. Jake would be at the house with me, along with Nancy and a notary public to witness any interactions. Margaret would also be present, ready to testify about my grandparents' mental state and stated wishes. I contacted the local police, explaining the situation and asking them to be ready to respond if my family attempted forced entry or created a disturbance. The officer took detailed notes and promised to flag the address for immediate response. Finally, I set up legal recording devices in the main rooms of the house, with visible signs notifying all entrants that audio and video recording was in progress, satisfying the two-party consent law. Thursday night I barely slept running through scenarios, but underneath the anxiety was a bedrock of certainty. I was doing exactly what my grandparents would have wanted, protecting the home they had lovingly maintained against those who saw it only as a payday. Whatever happened tomorrow, I would face it with the strength and integrity they had taught me. Friday morning dawned clear and bright, a beautiful spring day that belied the storm brewing. I woke early, showered, and dressed carefully in a professional navy suit, automatically reaching for the pearl earrings Grandma had given me for law school graduation. For important days, she had said, this certainly qualified. By 8:30 my support team had assembled. Jake arrived first, bringing coffee and a reassuring confidence. We have everything covered legally, he reminded me. Today is just about standing your ground. Nancy came next with Patricia, a solemn notary public. Margaret arrived shortly after, giving me a motherly hug before taking up position in the kitchen, where she began stress baking, the scent of cinnamon rolls soon filling the house. Sofia Rodriguez completed our team, bringing copies of the emergency injunction that had been granted by the court the previous afternoon, prohibiting any recording of property transfers related to the estate, just in case they try to go directly to the Registry of Deeds, she explained. We positioned ourselves strategically. I would meet my family on the front porch, the symbolic threshold they sought to cross. The others would remain inside, out of initial sight, but ready to step forward. The folder containing all relevant trust documents, the injunction, and evidence of the estate's protected status sat on the small table beside the porch swing, a visual counterpoint to whatever fraudulent papers my family would bring. At precisely 11:45 a.m., 15 minutes before their self-imposed eviction deadline, a black SUV pulled up at the curb. Behind it, a large moving truck rumbled, double-parked on the narrow street. Several neighbors paused their gardening to watch. My father emerged first from the SUV, dressed in what he probably thought was impressive business attire. My mother followed, her face set in grim determination, designer sunglasses hiding her eyes. Valerie bounced out last, practically skipping, phone already in hand, ready to document her victory. Behind them, two men climbed down from the moving truck, looking uncomfortable. My father waved them forward impatiently. I stood up slowly from the porch swing, the folder in my hand, and waited. Let them come to me. On my territory. Right on time to witness your departure, I see. My father called out as they approached the front walk. I hope you're packed and ready to go. He waved the folder he carried, presumably containing his fraudulent documents. I remained silent, standing tall at the top of the porch steps. Several neighbors had drifted closer, sensing drama, perhaps concerned for my welfare. We brought a truck to help with your things, my mother added, in a falsely sweet voice designed to present an image of familial concern to the watching neighbors. We know this must be difficult. As they reached the bottom of the porch steps, I finally spoke. Before you come any further, I should inform you that this property is under video and audio surveillance, and there are witnesses inside the house. Anything you say or do is being recorded. That stopped them momentarily. My father recovered first, his smile tightening. Always the dramatic one, Olivia. This doesn't change anything. We have legal documents giving us ownership of this property. He waved his folder again. You mean your forged documents? I asked calmly. The ones that supposedly override an irrevocable trust established over a year ago, when both my grandparents were alive and legally competent? My mother's smile faltered. Valerie looked uncertainly between her parents. The script was clearly not proceeding as planned. My father's face darkened as he climbed the first two steps. Now you listen here. This house belongs to me. My parents wanted me to have it. Whatever you tricked them into signing when they were sick doesn't change that. At that moment, the front door opened behind me. Jake stepped out, followed by Nancy, Sophia, Patricia the notary, and Margaret. The sight of 5 adults, clearly professional and prepared, brought my father up short. Mr. Morgan, Jake said pleasantly. I'm Jake Thompson, attorney for the Morgan Family Trust. I believe you were just about to accuse your daughter of fraud and undue influence. Please continue. We are recording for the court. My father's mouth opened and closed without sound. My mother grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. The moving truck men shuffled awkwardly, one checking his watch. Perhaps you should tell the movers they won't be needed today, I suggested quietly. Or any day. Finding his voice at last, my father blustered. This is ridiculous. I have a legal right to this property. I have documentation right here. He waved the folder again but made no move to open it. Sophia stepped forward, her professional demeanor unruffled. As counsel for the estate, I must inform you that we have obtained an emergency injunction, preventing any recording of fraudulent property transfers related to this estate. She held out a copy of the court order. Additionally, I should warn you that presenting forged documents is a felony in Massachusetts, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The color drained from my father's face. My mother stepped forward, trying a different approach. Olivia, honey, there's clearly been a misunderstanding. We only want what's best for the family. Perhaps we can discuss this privately, without all these people. There is nothing to discuss, I said firmly. Grandma and Grandpa established the Morgan Family Trust to protect their assets and legacy. All properties and investments are held by the trust, which I manage as the designated trustee. This was their choice, made freely while they were alive and well. Any documents you have claiming otherwise are fraudulent. My father's frustration boiled over. This is not over, Olivia. I am your father. That counts for something legally. I will fight this to the Supreme Court if necessary. I will make sure everyone knows how you manipulated 2 elderly people. Your reputation will be ruined. Jake stepped forward again. Mr. Morgan, are you threatening to file frivolous lawsuits and engage in defamation? Because that would constitute harassment and possibly extortion. Should I add that to the record? The moving truck driver approached cautiously. Sir, we're on the clock here. Are we moving anything or not? My father ignored him, his face contorted with rage. You ungrateful little. After everything we've done for you. I couldn't help the short, incredulous laugh that escaped me. Everything you've done for me? You abandoned me when I was 5 years old. Grandma and Grandpa raised me, loved me, taught me everything important about life and family. You showed up only when you needed money or thought there was something to gain. The naked truth hung in the air between us. Even Valerie looked uncomfortable now, her phone lowered, no longer recording the humiliating scene. I have something else you should hear, I said, pulling out my phone. I played the recording I had made of their conversation in the garden during Grandpa's final days. Their voices clear as they plotted to take advantage of Grandma's confusion and cut me out entirely. My mother gasped. My father's face turned an alarming shade of purple. That is illegal, he sputtered. You can't record people without their knowledge. Actually, Nancy interjected, Massachusetts law permits recording if the person recording is a party to the conversation or has consent from a party. Olivia was present and consented to her own recording. Perfectly legal. By now, several police officers had arrived, responding to calls from concerned neighbors about the escalating confrontation. As they approached, my father seemed to finally grasp the futility of his position. This is not over, he hissed, backing down the steps. Family should not treat family this way. On that we agree completely, I replied softly. The officers asked if there was a problem. I explained briefly that my family had made incorrect assumptions about property ownership, and that everything was under control. My legal team provided additional context, showing the officers the trust documents and injunction. Defeated but still defiant, my parents and sister returned to their SUV. The moving truck pulled away, its mission unfulfilled. As they drove off, I felt no triumph, only a profound sadness for what family should have been, but never was in my case. Margaret squeezed my shoulder. Your grandparents would be so proud, she said softly. So very proud. Standing on the porch Grandpa had built, surrounded by people who had shown more care and loyalty than my blood relatives ever had, I knew she was right. This had never been about money or property. It had been about honoring the true meaning of family and the promises we make to those we love. In the aftermath of that confrontation, many practical matters required attention. Jake filed the necessary paperwork to create a permanent record of the trust's validity and my position as trustee. Nancy helped me secure additional legal protections. The local police, now familiar with the situation, added extra patrols past the house for several weeks. Most surprisingly, the district attorney's office contacted me about pressing charges for attempted fraud and forgery. After much soul-searching, I declined to pursue criminal charges against my own family. Not out of any residual affection, but because I knew my grandparents would have wanted me to take the high road. The DA respected my decision but kept the case file open just in case. For several months I lived with a persistent anxiety, jumping at unexpected sounds, constantly checking security camera feeds. My parents made a few more attempts at contact, alternating between threats of endless litigation and plaintive appeals to family loyalty. Eventually, when it became clear that the trust was indeed ironclad, and that I had significant evidence of their fraudulent intentions, the communication stopped entirely. Living alone in the house that had once been filled with my grandparents' warmth and wisdom was both a comfort and a source of pain. Every room held memories. Grandpa reading by the fireplace, Grandma humming in the kitchen, the two of them dancing slowly to old records. The silence was sometimes overwhelming. I found myself talking aloud to them, asking for guidance or simply sharing my day. Grief, I discovered, doesn't follow a linear path. It circles back unexpectedly, triggered by a familiar sound or the changing of seasons. Recognizing I needed help, I began seeing Dr. Lillian Parker, a therapist specializing in grief and family trauma. Her gentle questions helped me untangle the complex emotions. Grief for my grandparents, anger at my parents' betrayal, guilt over sometimes wishing for a normal family, and a profound loneliness that seemed to have no bottom. What you are experiencing is complicated grief, Dr. Parker explained. You are not only mourning your grandparents, but also the loss of the idea of family as it should be. That is a significant double loss. Working with her, I learned to separate my parents' actions from my own worth, to recognize that their greed and manipulation reflected their character flaws, not any failure on my part. Most importantly, I began to understand that family is not defined solely by blood, but by love, respect, and mutual care. My colleagues at the law firm became an unexpected source of support. Jake and his wife invited me to holiday dinners. Sophia checked in regularly with coffee and conversation. Even the normally reserved senior partners showed their concern through mentorship and inclusion in important cases. About 6 months after the confrontation, I made the difficult decision to renovate parts of the house. Not to erase my grandparents' presence, but to blend their legacy with my own future. I kept Grandpa's library intact, but converted an unused bedroom into a modern home office. Grandma's kitchen remained largely unchanged, though I added new appliances she would have loved. The most significant change came when I established the Harold and Martha Morgan Scholarship Fund at my law school, dedicated to supporting students interested in elder law and the protection of vulnerable populations. Using a portion of the trust's assets this way felt right, a continuation of their generous spirits, and a way to create something positive from our painful family history. My professional life evolved as well. Drawing on my personal experience, I shifted my legal practice to focus exclusively on elder law and estate planning, working with families to create trusts and protective measures that would prevent the kind of exploitation my parents had attempted became deeply satisfying. Each client protected felt like a small victory, a ripple effect of good from my grandparents' wisdom. Slowly, I built a new kind of family around me. Margaret continued visiting regularly, now more friend than employee. My neighbors who had witnessed the drama unfold on my porch became closer, inviting me to block parties and community events. I joined a book club, finding connection through shared stories, just as I had with my grandparents. 2 years after that confrontation, I received a small envelope in the mail with no return address. Inside was a brief note from Valerie. I am sorry for what happened. They were wrong. I was wrong. I miss you. No request for money. No mention of the house or estate. Just a simple acknowledgement and what seemed like genuine regret. After much consideration, I responded with an equally brief note. Thank you for saying that. It matters. I didn't invite further contact, but I left the door slightly ajar. Whether anything would come of it remained to be seen, but the exchange felt like a small step toward healing, if not reconciliation. As for my parents, I've had no contact since that day. Sometimes I see their names in my email spam folder, or notice a missed call from an unknown number. I've made peace with the likelihood that we will never have a healthy relationship. That acceptance, painful though it was to reach, has been liberating. The most profound lesson from this journey has been understanding that family is not an automatic guarantee of love or loyalty. True family, whether related by blood or bound by choice, must be built on respect, honesty, and genuine care. My grandparents showed me what real family means, and in their absence I have found new ways to honor that legacy by creating my own chosen family of friends and mentors. I still sit on the porch swing some evenings, especially in spring when the garden grandma loved bursts into bloom. The house no longer feels empty, but filled with both memories and new possibilities. The trust my grandparents established protected more than just property. It preserved a foundation from which I could rebuild and grow after loss. For anyone facing similar challenges with family and inheritance, my advice is simple. Document everything, trust your instincts, and remember that protecting yourself against exploitation honors those who truly loved you. Standing firm against those who would take advantage of the vulnerable is not selfish. It is an act of courage and integrity. Have you ever had to protect yourself, or someone you love, from family members who showed their true colors when money was involved? Share your experience in the comments below. Sometimes, knowing we're not alone in these difficult situations can be incredibly healing. Thanks for listening. Take care.